There's a family board game called Life. Do you know this game? Do you know the objective of the game of life? How you win at life? At the end of the game, you count up all your money, and whoever has the most money wins. Well, this makes sense. If you need to make life into a competition, then you need to be able to measure and compare something. But in order to make this work, they had to take some liberties with reality. For example, at the end of the game, at retirement, you take all the children that you've accumulated over the course of the game, and you turn them in. And for each child, you receive $50,000. You get money for having children. Well, this seems at least a little bit misleading. But I think I might understand. It could be that they're trying to approximate the reward of being able to raise children. And to them, that monetary value is $50,000. I know it seems a bit arbitrary and it's just a game, but it's a game based on success in life. And I find it interesting that the creators of this game chose money as the measure of that success. Now, we have an expression that money can't buy happiness. And what I find interesting about that expression is the correlation at all between money and happiness. It's not an easy connection to make. Money is concrete. Happiness is abstract. And yet, these two ideas seem to be eternally linked. I think it's because we want to pursue happiness, we're just not really sure how to do it. So we pursue measurable things like money and grades instead. So here's a test. To what extent is the following statement true for you? I go to school to get good grades, so I can go to a good college, so I can get a good job, so I can make lots of money, and then I'll be happy. I understand this motivation. It can be very effective. Money and grades are easy to pursue. And because they're measured with numbers, it's easy to know how we're doing. And whether we like it or not, how we're doing compared to the people around us. But what I want you to consider today is adding to this motivation. Is it possible to be a high school student and answer the question, why am I here, with, I want to pursue my passion, and I want to let my unique gifts flourish? I think the answer is yes, and that is the purpose of this talk. How can we pursue that abstract and often elusive goal of happiness? And how can we bring that pursuit of happiness back to the forefront of the high school experience? So I believe that each of us, every single person, is a gift, wholly unique to this world. Never before in history and never again in the future will anyone see the world exactly the way that we see it. I find this to be amazing and so empowering. Your gift is irreplaceable. And I think you need to treat that with the appropriate respect. For example, I'm a high school teacher. There have been many great teachers before me, and there will be many great teachers after I'm done. But nobody will ever be able to do this job exactly the way that I do it. Better and worse can be contrived ideas, and I think they're much less important than unique. Better and worse can force us to measure things that can't and shouldn't be measured, like making raising children worth $50,000, or valuing a bright young soul based on grade point averages and standardized test scores. You have a light that nobody can duplicate. And your pursuit of happiness begins when you embrace that light and let it shine. And when you do, not only will you be connected to your true self, but you will attract to that true self the people who most appreciate your gifts. Now, a big problem that we have today is that we seem to have this dynamic backward. Instead of shining our lights, we try to figure out what will get us accepted, and then we try to become that person. Our hope is that acceptance will bring us happiness. But happiness is not something external, bestowed upon us by someone else's acceptance or perception of us. Happiness does not come from building a resume to impress somebody else. Happiness comes when we embrace who we really are. Find out where we can be the person that we want to be. Now, I realize I make this sound much easier than it really is. And believe me when I tell you, there have been plenty of times that I've tried to shine my light only to find that people have seemed rather unimpressed. But every single time, it seemed to work out. So when I was in high school, I asked lots of girls out on dates, and I got told no plenty of times. One time in particular, I asked a very special girl to the prom, and she turned me down. But 20 years later, we got married. We laugh sometimes and talk about how much easier things could have been if she just would have said yes in the first place. But you know what she tells me? She says, "You wouldn't have wanted to date me back then." See, it turns out she saw my light, but she wanted to pursue her own light. And I'm so glad she did, because seeing her light every day is one of the greatest sources of happiness for me in my life. Also, when I was in high school, I tried out for the volleyball team. I was really excited because I considered myself to be a pretty good volleyball player, but I didn't make the team. I remember thinking the coach literally did not see me. Wasn't watching me as I tried out. Well, I considered myself a pretty average soccer player, but I tried out for the soccer team, and the coach put me on the team, although he told me that I probably wouldn't see the field very often. Well, by the time I graduated high school, I had been named the team's most improved player twice, a fair indication of how much I needed to improve, and was also named a team captain. And in college, I started coaching a high school soccer team with a close friend of mine. And now, 25 years later, I'm still coaching. And it's another one of the great sources of happiness for me in my life. When I applied to college, my first choice was the Georgetown Hoyas. The reason they were my first choice? I have no idea. I don't think I ever knew why they were my first choice, but they were my first choice. I remember being in an interview and being asked if I had any questions about the school. I considered for a moment, but all I could come up with was, "So, what's a Hoya?" I didn't get in. I did get into UCLA. For whatever reason, UCLA wanted me. I know this is easy for me to talk about. UCLA is one of those so-called highly selective schools, and I also realized that I wouldn't get in if I applied to UCLA today. But you know where I would go if I didn't get into UCLA? Someplace else. Someplace else that wanted me for who I really am. There are thousands of colleges in this country, and not one of them will bring you true happiness just by accepting you. And every single one of them will offer you a path to pursue your own happiness. All you've got to do is choose. And when you do, be careful about how you value college rankings. Why would you let somebody else tell you what school is best for you? I recently had a conversation with a high school sophomore who told me that one of the factors drawing her to a particular college was that it was ranked number 1 in student happiness. And while I admire this criterion, I can't help but be a little bit concerned that it makes the pursuit of happiness passive. As if to say, well, a lot of other people go to this school and are happy, so if I go there, then maybe I'll be happy too. These college rankings seem so important during the application process. But what are they really beyond a limited measure of someone else's experience? College will offer you a path, every college, but it's up to you to pursue it. So here's an example. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a sportscaster. I wanted to be the best at whatever it is I decided to do, and I knew more about sports than anybody I knew. So I got to college, and I got an internship at a sports television network. I even got to read the sports report for the campus radio station. But ultimately, it didn't work out. So I took a run at being a DJ. I was terrible, and I hated it. So I started writing a newsletter for one of the student government offices on campus. But that didn't work out either. At one point, I thought I wanted to be a toy designer, so I got a job at a toy store on Melrose, but it was a bit of a dead end too. I don't regret any of those experiences. They were each valuable in their own way, and they each taught me something about myself. One of the things I learned is that I don't need to be the best at whatever I decide to do. Best can be contrived. I just want to be able to be passionate about whatever it is I decide to do. I just want to be able to do something that will allow me to share my gifts with the world. And here's how I got there. In high school, I was part of an organization called Assembly, like a high school cotillion, ballroom dancing, stuff like that. I didn't have to do it. It was fun in a different kind of a way. And I liked the fact that the girls had to say yes when I asked them to dance. And I was a pretty good dancer, too. I even got a job as a demonstrator for the local middle school cotillions once a month. So fast forward a couple of years, my sophomore year in college, I found myself a little bit lost and wanted to put myself on a good path again. So I applied for a job at a family summer camp. And I got the job, in spite of the fact that I hadn't built up much of a resume my first 2 years of college. I was my fraternity pledge class song chairman because I was the only one who knew all 12 days of Christmas at the holiday Christmas party. But aside from that, not much. My second year working at the camp, I remember asking the camp director why she hired me in the first place. And she said that she remembered that my application was a little bit sparse, but she liked the fact that I taught ballroom dance. Now, I didn't teach cotillion because I thought it would get me into college, and I definitely didn't teach cotillion because I thought it would get me a job. The truth is, it wouldn't have helped me get a lot of jobs. It didn't help me get my broadcast job, or my DJ job, or my writing job, or my toy store job. But it did help me get this job. The job that led me to my passion, the job that led me to become a teacher, where I've been allowed to share my gifts with the world for more than 25 years. When I graduated from college, I got hired here at Palos Verdes Peninsula High School. The man who hired me, Principal Kelly Johnson, one of the great leaders I have ever known, told me one thing: care about kids. And then he let me be myself. As long as I cared about kids, he trusted me. But more than he trusted me, he appreciated me. He wanted me to bring those passions that I'd been pursuing my whole life to his campus. And it wasn't just me, he did it with all of his teachers. And as a result, he built a faculty that was amazingly diverse. Different strengths, different weaknesses, different passions, different gifts. And this brings me to my final plea. As you grow and pursue your light, take the time to see the lights of the people around you. When I look at my colleagues, I do not see competitors. I see beautiful differences. None better than the next, just different. And I do not judge my success relative to them. How could I possibly measure that? When I look at my classes, I don't see percentages and grade point averages. I see wonderfully unique perspectives and points of view. And when I look out at all of you, I see a fireworks show of lights. And I do not care which one is the brightest. It doesn't matter. The beauty of your light comes from its uniqueness. And if even one of you were not to shine your light, the show would still go on, but it could never be the same. High school and college are a time for you to find yourself, to learn to know and love who you really are. Do not let some college tell you who that should be. You find a college that wants you, and then you bless that college with your acceptance. And then go take advantage of everything that school has to offer. Don't wait passively for someone else to validate you. Move forward, confident in the fact that you are the only one who controls your happiness. With all of my heart, I wish you the best. And I thank you for the gifts that only you can bring to this world. Good night.